am a 26-year-old woman. My family has always been a little complicated. Most of the complication came from one person, my Aunt Carol. She was my mother's older sister, and she acted like she was the queen of the entire family. Thanksgiving was her favorite holiday. It was her chance to hold court. We all had to go to her house. We all had to eat her food, and we all had to listen to her talk. This year was no different. The turkey was dry, the mashed potatoes were lumpy, and Aunt Carol was in the middle of one of her long, rambling stories. I was sitting between my mother and my boyfriend Liam. I was trying my best to look interested. I nodded along. I smiled at the right times. I was an expert at surviving Aunt Carol's performances. She loved the attention. She would pause for dramatic effect. She would lower her voice to a whisper. She would look around the table to make sure everyone was hanging on her every word. I caught my cousin Chloe's eye from across the table. Chloe was Carol's daughter. She gave me a small, tired smile. She was even better at this than I was. She had been dealing with it her whole life. My Uncle Mark, Carol's husband, was sitting at the head of the table. He was a quiet man. He barely said a word during these dinners. He just ate his food and let Carol run the show. He seemed content to be in her shadow. Or maybe he was just tired. I could never really tell. He was much older than Carol. He had a kind face, but it was always set in a neutral expression. The dinner was almost over. We were on to the pumpkin pie. I thought I had made it through another year. I was already thinking about the drive home with Liam. I was thinking about how we would laugh about the whole thing, how we would dissect every passive-aggressive comment and every fake smile. That was our tradition. It was the only thing that made these holidays bearable. But then Aunt Carol put her fork down. She did it with a loud clatter that made everyone stop talking. The small pockets of conversation around the table died out. Everyone looked at her. She had a strange look on her face. It was a mixture of anger and something else. Something that looked like triumph. My stomach tightened. This was new. This was not part of the usual script. She took a slow sip of her wine. She held the glass in her hand, swirling the dark red liquid. She looked around the table, her eyes landing on each person one by one. She was building the suspense. She was a master of drama. I felt a familiar sense of dread creep up my spine. My mother shifted nervously in her seat next to me. She knew her sister. She knew that look. "I have something to say," Carol announced. Her voice was low and serious. The room was completely silent. Even the sound of forks on plates had stopped. "It's something that has been weighing on my heart." I glanced at Liam. He gave my hand a small squeeze under the table. He was my rock in these situations. He understood my family better than anyone. He had seen Carol in action many times. He knew that whatever was coming was not going to be good. Carol continued, her eyes scanning the faces of her audience. "Family is the most important thing in the world," she said. "It's about loyalty. It's about trust. It's about respecting boundaries." I almost rolled my eyes. Carol talking about boundaries was like a wolf talking about vegetarianism. She had never respected a boundary in her life. She was constantly meddling in everyone's business. She gave unsolicited advice. She made judgments. She played favorites. My cousin Chloe was her golden child. I was not. But sometimes, Carol went on, her voice trembling with fake emotion, that trust is broken. Sometimes the person you least expect stabs you right in the back. My mother let out a small gasp. "Carol, what is it? What's wrong?" she asked. Carol ignored her. Her eyes were fixed on something, or someone. She was building up to her grand finale. I just wanted her to get it over with. I wanted to go home. I wanted to be anywhere but here. Then she said the words that would change everything. She said them slowly, clearly, so that everyone could hear. "Someone," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "is dating my man." There was a collective intake of breath around the table. My mother looked horrified. My other relatives looked shocked and confused. Chloe's face went pale. Uncle Mark, for the first time all evening, looked up from his plate. His eyes were wide. He looked just as stunned as everyone else. I was confused. Dating her man? Was she talking about Uncle Mark? Who would be dating Uncle Mark? He was a nice enough guy, but he was in his late 60s. He spent most of his time in his workshop building model trains. It seemed impossible. And then it happened. Aunt Carol slowly turned her head. Her eyes, cold and hard, moved across the table. They passed my mother. They passed my other aunts and uncles. They passed Chloe. And then they landed directly on me. She looked right at me. A sick feeling washed over me. It was like being plunged into ice water. My mind went blank. I could feel every eye at the table turning to me. I could feel their stares. I could feel their judgment. It was a nightmare. A public accusation. A public humiliation. "Carol, what are you saying?" My mother whispered, her voice shaking. But Carol didn't answer. She just kept staring at me. A small, cruel smile played on her lips. She had me exactly where she wanted me. Trapped. Defenseless. The villain in her little play. I opened my mouth to say something, but no words came out. What could I even say? The accusation was so absurd, so completely out of left field, that I didn't know how to respond. It was like being accused of flying to the moon. Liam's grip on my hand tightened. "That's a crazy thing to say, Carol," he said, his voice firm and steady. He was always the first to defend me. Carol finally broke her gaze from me and turned to Liam. "Oh, is it?" she said, her voice full of scorn. "You don't know everything, Liam. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors." "I know her," Liam said, his voice rising slightly. "And I know she would never do something like that." "Stay out of this, Liam," Carol snapped. "This is a family matter." My voice finally returned. It was small and shaky, but it was there. "Aunt Carol, I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "Oh, I think you do," she purred, turning her icy glare back on me. "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about." The room was thick with tension. No one knew what to say. My mother looked like she was about to cry. Chloe was staring down at her plate, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Uncle Mark had gone back to looking at his food, but his face was ashen. I felt a surge of anger. How dare she? How dare she do this to me in front of everyone? How dare she make up such a disgusting lie? "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice getting stronger. "I would never, ever do something like that. Uncle Mark is my uncle." "Is he?" Carol said, raising a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "You seem to spend a lot of time talking to him. You seem to have a lot of little secrets." My mind raced. Secrets? What secrets? I barely spoke to Uncle Mark. We exchanged pleasantries at family gatherings. That was it. What was she talking about? I tried to think of any recent interactions. A few weeks ago, he had called me. It was unusual. He had asked me a strange question about a bank. He had sounded nervous. I had been confused by the call, but I had answered his question and forgotten about it. Could that be what she was twisting? "I have no secrets with Uncle Mark," I said firmly. I looked at him, pleading with my eyes for him to say something. To deny it. To shut her down. But he just sat there. Silent. He wouldn't even look at me. His silence was a betrayal. It made me look guilty. It made her look credible. My mother finally found her voice again. "Carol, this is enough," she said, standing up. "You're making a scene. You're upsetting everyone." "I'm upsetting everyone?" Carol laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Your daughter is trying to steal my husband, and I'm the one making a scene?" "That is not true," I shouted, standing up as well. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Liam stood up with me. "You need to apologize," Liam said to Carol. "Right now." Carol just smirked. I will not. The truth hurts, doesn't it? I looked around the table. I saw doubt in some of my relatives' eyes. I saw pity in others. But mostly I saw the kind of morbid curiosity that people have when they watch a car crash. They were enjoying the drama. That was when I knew I couldn't win. Not here. Not like this. She had planned this. She had set the stage. She had chosen her moment. I was just a pawn in her game. I'm leaving, I said, my voice cold and flat. I couldn't stand to be in that room for another second. I couldn't stand to look at their faces. Yes, run away. Carol called after me as I turned to leave. That's what guilty people do. I didn't look back. I walked out of the dining room, through the living room, into the front door. Liam was right behind me. I could hear my mother calling my name, but I didn't stop. I fumbled with the doorknob, my hands shaking with anger and humiliation. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside. It was a relief after the stuffy, toxic atmosphere of the house. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. Liam put his arm around me. Are you okay? He asked softly. I shook my head. No, I whispered. Tears started to well up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I would not give her the satisfaction of knowing she had made me cry. We walked to the car in silence. As we drove away, I looked back at the house. The windows were brightly lit. I could imagine them all in there, talking about me, whispering, judging. And I could imagine Aunt Carol, sitting at the head of the table, smiling. She had won. For now. But as we drove further and further away, the humiliation began to fade. It was replaced by something else. A cold, hard anger. A deep, burning resolve. She had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. She had attacked my character. She had tried to ruin my reputation. She had done it publicly, deliberately, and with malice. I didn't know why she had done it. The accusation was insane. But I knew one thing for sure. I was not going to let her get away with it. This was not over. This was just the beginning. I would find out the truth. And I would make her regret the day she ever decided to make me her enemy. The drive home was silent. Liam knew better than to try to talk. He just kept his hand on my knee, a silent show of support. My mind was a whirlwind. I kept replaying the scene over and over. Carol's smug face, Uncle Mark's silence, the shocked looks of my family. When we got back to our apartment, I finally let the tears fall. I wasn't just sad. I was furious. I was hurt. I was deeply, profoundly confused. Why would she do that? What could possibly be her motive? It makes no sense, I said to Liam, pacing back and forth in our living room. Uncle Mark, it's absurd. It's laughable, but she said it with such conviction. And people, I think some of them believed her. They don't matter, Liam said, pulling me into a hug. The only people who matter are the ones who know you. And we know it's a lie. But why, Liam? Why that lie? Why me? I don't know, he admitted. Carol is Carol. She's a narcissist. She needs drama. Maybe she's just bored. Maybe she's jealous of you for some reason. Jealous of me? For what? I'm not rich. I don't have a perfect life. I have a normal job in a small apartment. You're happy, he said simply. You have a good relationship. You're independent. Maybe she resents that. She has to control everything and everyone. You're one of the few people who doesn't bow down to her. He had a point. I had always tried to maintain a respectful distance from Aunt Carol. I didn't get drawn into her games. I didn't seek her approval. Maybe that was my crime. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, I answered, putting it on speaker. Are you okay? She asked, her voice frantic. No, Mom, I'm not okay, I said, my voice flat. Your sister just publicly accused me of trying to steal her husband. I know, honey. I know. She's she's just not herself tonight. She's been under a lot of stress. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. An excuse. She was already making excuses for Carol. Stress? That's your explanation? She humiliated me in front of the entire family based on a complete fabrication, and you're telling me she's stressed? She didn't mean it the way it came out, my mom insisted. She gets carried away sometimes. You know how she is. Yes, I do know how she is, I said, my anger rising. She's a bully, and you always let her get away with it. You always make excuses for her. That's not fair, my mom said, her voice wavering. She's my sister. I'm just trying to keep the peace. There is no peace, Mom. There's just Carol walking all over everyone and the rest of us tiptoeing around her so we don't set her off. Well, I'm done tiptoeing. What are you going to do? She asked, a note of fear in her voice. I'm going to find out why she did this, I said. And I'm going to make her tell everyone the truth. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Maybe you should just let it go, my mom said softly. It will all blow over. You know how family gossip is. Let it go? She accused me of being a home wrecker. That's not something that just blows over. This is my reputation, my integrity. I'm not letting it go. I ended the call before she could argue anymore. I felt a pang of guilt for being so harsh with her, but my anger at Carol overshadowed everything else. My mother was an enabler. She had spent her whole life smoothing things over for her sister, and in doing so, she had allowed Carol's toxic behavior to flourish. The next day, I started my investigation. It felt silly to even call it that. I was investigating a fantasy, but I had to start somewhere. I went back to the one thing that felt out of place before the accusation: the phone call from Uncle Mark. I found it in my call history from a few weeks ago. He had never called me before. I remembered being surprised when his name popped up on my screen. I remembered the conversation being stilted and awkward. He had started with some small talk, asking how I was, how work was. Then he got to the point. He had asked me if I knew anything about setting up online access for a trust account. He mentioned the name of a specific bank, a small local one. I had told him I didn't know much about it, but that he could probably do it on the bank's website or by calling their customer service line. He had thanked me and then hung up abruptly. At the time, I thought it was just a random, odd question from an older relative who wasn't great with technology. But now, in the context of Carol's accusation, it seemed significant. She had said we had little secrets. Was this one of them? Had she seen the call on his phone? But why would a question about a bank account lead to an accusation of an affair? It didn't add up, unless the trust account was the real issue. Maybe the affair was just a distraction, a smokescreen. I decided my first step was to talk to Chloe. As Carol's daughter, she was closer to the situation than anyone. She was also caught in the middle. I knew she was loyal to her mother, but she was also a decent person. I hoped she would be willing to talk to me. I sent her a text. Hey, can we talk? It's important. She replied almost immediately. I don't think that's a good idea. Chloe, please, I typed. I just want to understand what your mom said last night. It came out of nowhere. I'm so confused. She didn't reply for a long time. I was about to give up when my phone buzzed again. Meet me at the coffee shop near your place in an hour, her text read, and don't tell anyone. I felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe Chloe would be my ally. Maybe she could shed some light on this whole mess. I got to the coffee shop early and found a quiet table in the back. Chloe arrived a few minutes later. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red and puffy, as if she had been crying. Thanks for coming, I said as she sat down. I shouldn't be here, she said, not looking at me. Mom would kill me if she knew. I just want to know why, Chloe, I said gently. Why would she say that? You know it's not true. Chloe finally looked at me. Her expression was a mixture of sadness and frustration. I know, she whispered. Of course I know. It's insane. Then why? She sighed, a long, weary sound. I don't know for sure. Mom has been weird lately. Really paranoid. Especially about money. Money. There it was again. The trust account. Money? I asked, trying to sound casual. Why? Are they having financial problems? Chloe shrugged. I don't think so. They seem fine. Mom is always buying new clothes, new furniture. She just redid the entire kitchen. But she's been fighting with Dad a lot. About money. I overhear them sometimes. She's always yelling at him about being secretive. Secretive how? I don't know the details, Chloe said, shaking her head. He's been spending a lot of time in his office on his computer. She thinks he's hiding something from her. This was it. This had to be connected. Uncle Mark was doing something with money that Carol didn't approve of. He had called me for help with the trust account. Carol found out and concocted this insane story to punish him and to discredit me. Chloe, a few weeks ago your dad called me, I said, deciding to take a risk. He asked me a question about a bank, something about a trust account. Chloe's eyes widened. He did? Yes. Do you know anything about a family trust? She shook her head. No, my parents don't really talk to me about finances, but that's weird. Why would he call you about that and not me? I don't know, I said. But a theory was starting to form in my mind. A dark, ugly theory. What if the trust was for us? For the grandchildren? And what if Carol didn't want me to know about it? I have to go, Chloe said suddenly, grabbing her purse. I'm sorry, I can't talk about this anymore. It's too much. Chloe, wait, I said. Just one more thing. Do you think your dad is having an affair? She looked at me, her face grim. With you? No. With anyone? Honestly, I don't know anymore. Things are really bad at home, worse than they've ever been. She stood up and rushed out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The conversation had been short, but it had given me a crucial piece of the puzzle. This wasn't about an affair. This was about money. And Aunt Carol was at the center of it, spinning a web of lies to cover something up. I now had a direction. I needed to find out about this trust. I needed to know what was in it, who it was for, and why Uncle Mark was being so secretive about it. My next step was clear. I had to talk to Uncle Mark. But this time, I had to do it without Carol finding out. Getting to Uncle Mark alone was going to be difficult. Carol watched him like a hawk. They were always together. Calling him was risky. Carol probably checked his phone. I needed to find a way to get him on his own, away from the house. I remembered that he had a hobby. He loved woodworking. He had a small workshop in a rented space a few towns over. He used to go there every Saturday morning to work on his projects. I wasn't sure if he still did, but it was my only shot. The following Saturday, I drove to the address I had found in an old family address book. It was a small industrial park with a row of identical garage-like units. I found the one with his name on the lease agreement taped to the door. I parked my car where he wouldn't see it and waited. For an hour, nothing happened. I was starting to think I had been wrong. Maybe he didn't come here anymore. I was about to leave when his old brown sedan pulled into the parking lot. I watched as he got out of the car. He looked tired. He moved slowly like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders. He unlocked the door to his workshop and went inside. I gave him a few minutes to get settled. Then I got out of my car and walked to the door. I took a deep breath and knocked. There was a long pause. Then the door creaked open a few inches. Uncle Mark peered out. When he saw me, his eyes widened in panic. "What are you doing here?" he whispered, looking around nervously. "I need to talk to you, Uncle Mark," I said, my voice low but firm. "You can't be here," he said, trying to close the door. "If Carol finds out—" "I know," I said, putting my hand on the door to stop him. That's why I came here. She won't find us here. Please, just give me 5 minutes. He hesitated. He looked torn. He was clearly terrified. But there was something else in his eyes, too. A desperation. A plea for help. Finally, he sighed and opened the door wider. 5 minutes, he said, letting me in and quickly closing and locking the door behind me. The workshop was small and smelled of sawdust and varnish. Model train parts were scattered on a large workbench. It was his sanctuary, his escape. "What do you want?" he asked, not looking at me. He busied himself with arranging some tools on the bench. "I want to know why," I said, getting straight to the point. "Why did you let her say that about me? Why didn't you defend me?" He stopped what he was doing but kept his back to me. "It's complicated," he mumbled. "It's not complicated, Uncle Mark. It's simple. She lied. You know she lied. And you sat there and said nothing. Your silence made me look guilty. Do you have any idea how that felt?" He finally turned to face me. His face was etched with shame and regret. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I am so, so sorry. I never wanted this to happen." "Then why did you let it?" He sank down onto a stool, burying his face in his hands. "I'm a coward," he said. "I've always been a coward. She controls everything. My whole life, I'm trapped." "Trapped how?" I asked, my anger softening slightly at the sight of this broken man. "It's the money," he said, his voice muffled by his hands. "It's always been about the money." He looked up at me, his eyes full of despair. "That trust you asked about. The one I called you about. It's from your grandparents, my parents. They set it up before they passed away." "Okay," I said, my heart starting to beat faster. "What about it?" "It was for the grandchildren," he said. "For you and for Chloe. It was supposed to be split evenly between you both when you turned 30. I was 26. Chloe was 25. "I don't understand," I said. "I never knew about any trust." "That's because Carol didn't want you to," he said, his voice laced with bitterness. "She's the trustee. She's been managing it all these years. Or at least, that's what she was supposed to be doing." A cold dread washed over me. "What has she been doing?" I asked, already knowing the answer. He shook his head slowly. "She's been spending it," he said. "All of it. Or most of it. On herself, on the house, on clothes, cars, vacations. She's been living off of your inheritance. Your and Chloe's." I felt the air leave my lungs. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. She hadn't just lied about me. She had been stealing from me. For years. "How do you know?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I found out a few months ago," he explained. "I got a letter from the bank by mistake. It was a statement for the trust. I opened it. I saw the balance. It was much, much lower than it should have been. And then I saw the withdrawals. Hundreds of them. Over years. Transfers to her personal accounts. Payments to credit cards." He got up and walked over to a locked filing cabinet in the corner. He fumbled with a key, his hands shaking. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. He placed it on the workbench in front of me. "I started digging," he said. "I made copies, every statement, every transfer. It's all in there." I opened the folder. It was filled with bank statements, credit card bills, and highlighted transaction records. It was a meticulous record of her theft. The sheer scale of it was breathtaking. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money that was meant for me. Money that was meant for her own daughter. "Why did she do it?" I whispered, flipping through the pages in disbelief. "Greed," he said simply. "She always wanted more. She was always jealous of people who had more than her. She felt entitled to it. She said she was just borrowing it, that she would pay it back. But she never did. The hole just got deeper and deeper." "And the accusation against me?" I asked, looking up from the damning evidence. The affair? That was desperation, he said, his face grim. I confronted her. I told her I knew. I told her we had to fix it. That we had to tell you and Chloe. She panicked. She said I was trying to ruin her. A few days later, she found my phone. She saw that I had called you. She put 2 and 2 together and got $1 million. She convinced herself that I was planning to run away with you, that I was going to give you what was left of the money. He let out a hollow, humorless laugh. She created this insane story in her head. That I was in love with you, that we were having an affair, and that I was going to leave her for you. It was easier for her to believe that than to face the fact that she is a thief. It all made a sick kind of sense. The accusation wasn't just a random act of cruelty. It was a calculated, preemptive strike. She was trying to discredit me. If I came forward with the truth about the money, who would believe me? I was just the bitter, scorned other woman trying to get revenge. She had been trying to destroy my credibility before I even knew there was a battle to be fought. So you let her do it, I said, the anger returning. You let her humiliate me to save yourself. I was scared, he said, his eyes pleading. She threatened me. She said if I told anyone, she would destroy me. She would tell everyone I was losing my mind, that I was the one stealing the money. She said she would make sure I ended up with nothing. And I believed her. I looked at the folder, at the proof, at the years of deceit and betrayal. Then I looked at the pathetic man in front of me. He was weak. He was a coward. But he had also given me the weapon I needed to fight back. She's not going to get away with this, I said, my voice low and steady. I closed the folder. Neither of you are. His face fell. What are you going to do? I'm going to expose her, I said. I'm going to take this to the family, and I'm going to get my money back. Please, he begged. Don't. It will tear the family apart. Think of Chloe. Think of your mother. She should have thought of that before she stole from her own daughter, I said coldly. And you should have thought of that before you let her accuse me of being a monster to cover her crimes. I picked up the folder. I'm taking this, I said. You can either help me or you can stand by and watch her go down. But either way, this is happening. He stared at me, his face a mask of terror and defeat. He knew he had no choice. He had lost control of the situation the moment he opened that workshop door. What do you want me to do? He whispered. For now, nothing, I said. Just act normal. Don't let her know we spoke. I need to think. I need to plan. But when the time comes, you're going to tell the truth. All of it. He nodded slowly, a broken man. I left the workshop with the folder clutched tightly in my hand. It felt heavy. It was the weight of years of lies, but it was also the weight of justice. Driving home, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick. My aunt, the woman who had judged me my whole life, was a common thief. My uncle was her spineless accomplice. My cousin was a victim, just like me. My whole family was built on a foundation of lies. When I got home, I showed Liam the folder. He read through the documents, his expression growing darker with every page. This is unbelievable, he said, shaking his head. She stole from you. From her own child. I know, I said. I felt strangely calm. The shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, clear focus. What's your plan? He asked. I'm going to call a family meeting, I said. My mom, Chloe, Carol, and Mark. I'm going to confront her. Are you sure that's a good idea? To do it in front of everyone? Yes, I said without hesitation. She humiliated me publicly. I'm going to expose her publicly. She built her entire identity on being the perfect matriarch, the one who holds this family together. I'm going to show them all who she really is. What about Chloe? Liam asked gently. This is going to destroy her. I know, I said, and a wave of sadness washed over me. That's the worst part of all of this. But Chloe deserves to know the truth. She deserves to know why her mother has been fighting with her father. She deserves to know what happened to her inheritance. I spent the rest of the weekend planning. I made copies of every document in the folder. I organized them chronologically. I wrote down a list of key points I wanted to make. I was preparing for war. On Monday morning, I sent a group text to my mother, Chloe, Carol, and Mark. I am hosting a dinner at my apartment on Friday night. I wrote, "It is very important that you all be there. We have something we need to discuss as a family." The replies came in quickly. My mother and Chloe agreed immediately. Mark sent a simple, "Okay." Carol's reply came last. "A dinner? How lovely. But I'm quite busy this week. What is this about?" I typed my reply carefully. "It's about Thanksgiving," I wrote. "It's about the things you said. We need to clear the air." I knew that would bait her. She wouldn't be able to resist the chance to have another go at me. She would see it as another opportunity to play the victim and paint me as the villain. She replied a minute later, "Fine, we'll be there." The trap was set. The next 5 days were the longest of my life. I went to work. I ate. I slept. But my mind was constantly on the coming confrontation. I rehearsed what I would say. I anticipated her reactions. I tried to prepare myself for the emotional fallout. Liam was my anchor. He listened to me talk for hours. He helped me organize my thoughts. He reminded me that I was doing the right thing. "She's going to get nasty." He warned me on Thursday night. "She's going to lie. She's going to try to turn it around on you." "I know," I said. "But this time I have proof. She can't lie her way out of a bank statement." On Friday, I left work early to prepare. I didn't cook an elaborate meal. I just ordered some pizzas. This wasn't a social gathering. It was a reckoning. I set the copies of the documents in a neat pile on the coffee table, hidden under a magazine. The original folder was safely locked away. They arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. My mother and Chloe came in first. They both looked nervous. Then came Carol and Mark. Carol swept into the apartment like she owned the place, a fake, bright smile plastered on her face. Mark trailed behind her, his eyes fixed on the floor. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. He wouldn't look at me. "What a cute little place," Carol said, looking around my apartment with a condescending air. "Very cozy." "Have a seat," I said, my voice even. I gestured to the living room sofas. They all sat down. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My mother kept wringing her hands. Chloe was chewing on her thumbnail. Carol sat perfectly poised, a queen on her throne waiting for the proceedings to begin. I sat down in the armchair opposite them. Liam stood behind me, a silent guard. I took a deep breath. It was time. I start. "Thank you all for coming," I say, my voice steady. It feels strange to be using the present tense in my head, but it's happening now. The confrontation is here. "I asked you here because we need to talk about what happened at Thanksgiving." Carol scoffs, a small, theatrical sound. "I thought we already settled that," she says. "You were upset. You ran out. End of story." "No," I say, looking directly at her. "That's not the end of the story. You made a very serious accusation against me, Aunt Carol. You did it in front of our entire family. And it was a lie." "It was not a lie," she snaps, her mask of pleasantness dropping instantly. "I know what I saw. I know what I heard." "What did you see?" I ask calmly. "What did you hear? Be specific." She falters for a second. "I saw the way you look at him," she says, gesturing vaguely towards Mark. "I heard your secret phone calls." "You mean the one phone call?" I ask. "The one where your husband called me to ask for help with a computer question because he was too afraid to ask you?" Mark flinches. Carol's eyes narrow. "He told me it was about more than that." She lies smoothly. "He told me you've been pursuing him." I turn my head to look at my uncle. "Is that true, Uncle Mark?" I ask, my voice soft but clear. Did you tell her that? Did you tell her I was pursuing you? The room is silent. Everyone is looking at Mark. He is pale, sweating. He stares at the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Mark, tell them, Carol says, her voice sharp, a clear command. He looks up. His eyes are filled with terror. He looks at Carol, then at me, then at his daughter, Chloe. I can see the battle raging inside him. He opens his mouth, but only a small squeak comes out. He's just protecting you, Carol says, answering for him. He's a good man. He doesn't want to embarrass you further. This is my moment. The moment I switch from defense to offense. No, I say. That's not it at all. He's not protecting me. He's protecting you. Carol laughs. Protecting me? From what? From your pathetic attempts to steal my husband? No, I say again. He's protecting you from this. I reach for the pile of papers on the coffee table. I pick up the top sheet and hold it out. It's a bank statement for the trust account from 5 years ago. The balance is clearly visible. It's a healthy 6-figure number. Do you recognize this, Aunt Carol? I ask. She glances at it, her expression unreadable. It's a piece of paper. What of it? It's a statement for the Eleanor and David Miller Grandchildren's Trust, I say, using my grandparents' names. My mother gasps. She knew about the trust, but like me, she had no idea Carol was the trustee. I don't know what you're talking about, Carol says, but a flicker of panic crosses her face. I think you do, I say. I place the first statement down on the table. Then I pick up another one. And this is a statement from last month. I hold it up. The balance is a fraction of what it was, a shockingly small amount. Funny, isn't it? I say, my voice dripping with false curiosity. How a trust that was supposed to be growing has shrunk so much. Where do you think all that money went, Aunt Carol? Carol is speechless. Her face has gone white. She looks at Mark with pure fury. She knows he's the one who gave me this. My mother is looking back and forth between the papers and her sister's face. Carol? She says, her voice trembling. What is she talking about? Chloe looks utterly confused. A trust? For us? What trust? A trust our grandparents set up for me and Chloe. I explain, my eyes never leaving Carol's. A trust that your mother was supposed to be managing. A trust that she has been using as her own personal piggy bank for the last 10 years. That's a lie, Carol shrieks, finding her voice. She stands up, pointing a shaking finger at me. She's a liar. She's making all of this up to get back at me. She's trying to tear this family apart because she's angry I exposed her affair. Then explain this, I say, my voice rising to match hers. I throw another paper on the table. It's a copy of a transfer record. A 5-figure sum moving from the trust account directly into an account in Carol's name. The memo line reads, kitchen remodel. Chloe gasps. She looks at her mother, her eyes wide with dawning horror. The kitchen? She whispers. You paid for the new kitchen with our money? No, Carol insists, her voice cracking. It's a forgery. She's faking these documents. Mark, tell them. Tell them she's lying. All eyes turn back to Mark. This is his moment of truth. He can side with his wife and her lies, or he can side with the truth. He looks at Chloe, whose face is now streaked with tears. He sees the devastation he has helped cause. He takes a shaky breath. It's true, he says, his voice hoarse. It's all true. The dam breaks. Carol lets out a guttural scream of rage and betrayal. You, she screams at Mark. You did this. You gave her those papers, you traitor. I had to, Carol, he says, his voice gaining a little strength. It was wrong. What you were doing was wrong. It was theft. Theft? She sputters. It was my parents' money. I was entitled to it. No, you weren't, my mother cries out, finally finding her voice. She is on her feet now, her face a mask of disbelief and fury. It was for the girls. It was for your daughter. How could you, Carol? How could you steal from your own child? I was going to pay it back. Carol wails, her carefully constructed facade crumbling into dust. I just needed some help. Things were tight. Things were tight? I say, my voice laced with ice. You went on 3 European vacations in the last 2 years. You bought a new luxury car. You have a closet full of designer clothes. That's not tight, Carol. That's greed. I start laying the papers out on the table, one by one. Here's the trip to Italy. Here's the down payment on the BMW. Here's a $5,000 charge at a designer boutique. All of it paid for with money you stole from me and from Chloe. Chloe is openly sobbing now, her head in her hands. My mother is staring at her sister as if she's a stranger. Carol collapses back onto the sofa, defeated. The fight has gone out of her. She just stares at the mountain of evidence on the table. The proof of her betrayal. The accusation, I say, bringing it full circle. The affair. That was all a lie, wasn't it? A smokescreen. You found out Mark was talking to me. You were terrified I was about to find out about this. So you tried to destroy me first. You tried to make me into a villain so no one would ever believe me. I am standing now, looking down at her. You didn't just steal our money, Aunt Carol. You tried to steal my name, my character. You tried to humiliate me and isolate me to cover up your own disgusting crimes. You are not a victim. You are a thief and a liar. The room is silent except for Chloe's quiet sobs. Carol doesn't say a word. She has nothing left to say. The truth is all there, laid out on the coffee table for everyone to see. I look at my mother. Her face is a mixture of anger and deep, deep shame. Shame for her sister's actions, and shame for her own blindness, for all the years she enabled her. I look at Chloe, my heart aching for her. Her whole world has just been shattered. And I look at Carol. She looks small, pathetic. The powerful queen has been dethroned. She has lost everything. Her reputation, her daughter's respect, her family's trust. I want my money back, I say, my voice cold and hard as steel. All of it. And Chloe's too. You will liquidate whatever assets you need to. You will sell the car. You will sell your jewelry. You will pay it all back, with interest. She still says nothing. She just stares blankly ahead. And you will apologize, I continue. Not just to me. You will call every single person who was at that Thanksgiving dinner. And you will tell them that you lied. You will tell them you made the whole thing up. I wait. The silence stretches on. Finally, she looks up at me. Her eyes are empty. Okay, she whispers. It's over. I won. But I don't feel the rush of victory I expected. I just feel tired and sad. Sad for the family that has been broken by one person's greed. Liam comes and puts his hand on my shoulder. I lean into him, grateful for his steady presence. I think you should all go now, I say quietly. My mother comes over to me, her eyes full of tears. I'm so sorry, honey, she whispers. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. I should have stood up for you. It's okay, Mom, I say, and I mean it. Her apology is a start. She goes to Chloe and wraps her arms around her. Chloe clings to her, sobbing. Mark stands awkwardly by the door, his face a mess of shame and relief. Carol gets up slowly like an old woman. She doesn't look at anyone. She walks to the door and leaves without a word. Mark follows her out. My mother and Chloe stay for a little while longer. We sit in silence, the three of us, surrounded by the wreckage. There are no easy words. There is no quick fix for this kind of betrayal. Eventually, my mother takes Chloe home. After they leave, Liam and I are left alone in the quiet apartment. The pizzas are still in their boxes, untouched. The damning pile of paper is still on the coffee table. You did it, Liam says softly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I did, I say. I lean my head back against his chest. I feel a profound sense of exhaustion, bone deep and complete. The war is over. The truth is out. The days that followed were a blur of difficult conversations and logistical arrangements. The family was in turmoil. The news of Carol's theft and her malicious lie spread like wildfire. As I had demanded, she called every relative who had been at the dinner. She confessed, through what was described to me as a choked monotone voice, that she had fabricated the entire story about me and Mark. She offered no real explanation, just a flat admission that it was a lie. The apologies were hollow, but they served their purpose. They cleared my name. The reaction from the family was a mixture of shock, disgust, and a strange kind of validation for those who had always found Carol's behavior grating. She was no longer the feared matriarch. She was a pariah. No one called her. No one visited. The queen was left alone in her castle, a castle paid for with stolen money. My first real conversation after the confrontation was with Chloe. She called me a few days later. Her voice was small and fragile. "Can I come over?" she asked. "Of course," I said. When she arrived, she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. We sat on my sofa, the same place where her world had fallen apart. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears immediately welling in her eyes. "For what she did to you. For everything. It's not your fault." "Chloe," I said, handing her a tissue. "You're a victim in this too." "I know, but I feel so guilty," she confessed. "All those years I defended her. I thought she was just difficult. I never imagined she was capable of something like this, stealing from us. From me." She shook her head in disbelief. "And the lie she told about you. It was so cruel. I knew it wasn't true, but I was too scared to stand up to her." "I get it," I said. "She's your mom, and she's terrifying." We talked for hours. For the first time, we spoke honestly about what it was like growing up under Carol's shadow. Chloe confessed her resentment over the pressure to be perfect. I confessed my frustration at always being cast as the less favored niece. We found a common ground in our shared trauma, and a new, stronger bond began to form between us. "What's going to happen now?" she asked. "With them? My parents?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Your dad is staying at a hotel. He said he can't be in that house with her right now." "I can't either," Chloe said. "I'm staying with a friend. Every time I look at her, all I can see is the lies." The financial side of things was more straightforward, if not less messy. I hired a lawyer, on Liam's advice, to make sure the repayment was handled properly. The lawyer drew up a legally binding agreement. Carol and Mark would have to sell the house. The proceeds would first go to replenishing the trust, including an amount calculated for lost growth over the years. Whatever was left, they could have. The BMW was sold. Carol's expensive jewelry was appraised and sold. It was a slow, humiliating process of dismantling the life she had built on deceit. My mother was a wreck. She called me every day, oscillating between fury at her sister and a deep, sorrowful guilt. "I should have known," she said during one of our calls. "The signs were all there. Her spending was out of control. Her jealousy of you was so obvious. I just didn't want to see it. It was easier to pretend everything was fine." "You wanted to keep the peace," I said, echoing her words from Thanksgiving night. "What peace?" she said with a bitter laugh. "It was a fake peace, a fragile truce that depended on everyone letting Carol have her way. It wasn't healthy for any of us." It felt like she was finally waking up from a long, long dream. She started setting boundaries with other people in her life. She started speaking her mind more. In a strange way, Carol's implosion had liberated her as well. I even had a conversation with Uncle Mark. He called me about a month after the confrontation. He sounded different, quieter but less tense. "The house is on the market," he told me. "We signed the papers with your lawyer." "Good," I said. There was a long, awkward pause. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said finally. I was taken aback. "Thank me? For what?" "For doing what I couldn't." he said, for standing up to her. I was trapped for so long. I was miserable. I was a coward. You broke the spell. You had the evidence, Mark, I reminded him. You could have done it yourself. I know, he said, and I could hear the shame in his voice. But I couldn't. But now, it's over. I'm moving into a small apartment. I'm filing for divorce. For the first time in 30 years, I feel like I can breathe. I didn't know what to say. I still felt a lot of anger towards him for his silence at that dinner, but I also felt a sliver of pity. He was a casualty of Carol's reign just as much as anyone else. I hope you find some peace, Uncle Mark, I said, and I found that I actually meant it. 6 months later, the house was sold. The money, a substantial 6-figure sum for both me and Chloe, was deposited into our respective accounts. Seeing that number in my bank account was a surreal experience. It wasn't a windfall. It was a recovery. It was justice. Chloe and I met for lunch to celebrate. She was doing much better. She was in therapy, working through the betrayal. She had a new apartment and was reconnecting with her dad. Her relationship with her mother was non-existent. She tried to call me last week, Chloe told me, sipping her iced tea. She left a voicemail. It was weird. She didn't apologize. She just talked about how lonely she was and how everyone had abandoned her. Of course, I said, not surprised. Carol was incapable of seeing her own fault. In her mind, she would always be the victim. It's sad in a way, Chloe said. She has nothing. No husband, no daughter, no family, no big house. All she has is her bitterness. We talked about what we would do with the money. Chloe wanted to go back to school and get her master's degree, something she had put off because she thought she couldn't afford it. I decided to use a portion of mine as a down payment on a small house for me and Liam. It was something we had dreamed about, but thought was years away. Life settled into a new normal, a better normal. The holidays were quieter. We spent Thanksgiving at my mom's house. It was a small gathering. Just me, Liam, my mom, Chloe, and Mark. The food was simple. The conversation was easy and genuine. There was no drama, no performance, no walking on eggshells. It was peaceful. As we were clearing the table, my mom pulled me aside. "This is nice, isn't it?" she said, a soft smile on her face. "It really is," I agreed. I was so afraid of the family falling apart, she confessed. But it didn't fall apart. It just broke into the right pieces, the healthy pieces. She was right. The toxic part had been cut away, and what was left was healing. I never saw Aunt Carol again. I heard through the grapevine that she had moved to a small rental apartment in a different town. She had a part-time job at a department store. The image of the once grand matriarch folding sweaters for minimum wage was a stark one. She had tried to make me feel small, to ruin my life over a lie. But in the end, her own greed and cruelty had ruined hers. One evening, Liam and I were sitting on the porch of our new house. We had been there for a month. It was small and cozy, and it was ours. I was watching the sunset, feeling a deep sense of peace. "What are you thinking about?" Liam asked, putting his arm around me. I thought about the past year, the humiliation at the dinner table, the cold dread of discovering the truth, the terrifying confrontation, the messy, painful aftermath. "I was just thinking about Aunt Carol," I said. "Don't," he said gently. "She's not worth your thoughts." "I know," I said. "It's just, I finally understand. She spent all that energy, all those years trying to control everyone, trying to build this perfect image. She thought the money and the house and the power made her big. But it was all hollow." I leaned my head on his shoulder, looking out at the quiet street. She finally learned what it feels like to be small, and I learned that my strength wasn't in being quiet and keeping the peace. It was in speaking the truth no matter how much it cost. The lie she told was meant to be my undoing, but in the end, it was the truth that set me free. and it was the truth that brought her crumbling down. She had started a war she was not prepared to finish, against an opponent she had tragically underestimated. She had lost, and I had won. Not just my money, but my voice, my strength, and my peace. And that was a victory worth any price.